Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome. We got a pretty busy day ahead of us, so we'll try and get started on time here. We're going to open up the hearing on House Bill 1332. Is Representative Wade here? Or do we have someone to introduce it? Josh?
Mr. Chair, I'll introduce House Bill 1332 relative to the authorization display of flags at the State House grounds.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, Representative Hill, we'll call you up first to testify.
Thank you, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
morning and welcome.
Good morning to all. For the record, I am Representative Greg Hill. I represent Northfield, and I'm here today as the chairman of Legislative Administration that heard this bill. I think the fastest thing for you today will be if I just recite for you the committee report, which will give you a best idea of how we got to where we are today. The unanimous recommendation of the committee recognized the enthusiastic testimony heard from the New Hampshire representative to our many veterans groups. Kevin Grady is here today, as you may well have already realized, as well as the Gold Star families themselves. The bill amendments swapped the controversial Honor and Remember flag for the federally recognized Gold Star flag. The amendment also allowed the governor to order the Gold Star flag to fly on State House grounds and at the New Hampshire Veterans Cemetery in Boscawen to commemorate and celebrate the Gold Star Families Day, the last Sunday in September. Additionally, the bill follows a growing number of states throughout the country that restrict those flags to be flown on State House grounds, and it sets a limitation to those that are federally recognized by Congress, executive order, or federal agency regulation. Included under that definition would be the U.S. flag, the New Hampshire state flag, actually all state flags, the POW MIA flag, the military branch flags, and the Gold Star flag. The vote in the committee was 10-0. The bill passed on consent. Hopefully, we have passed the point of the controversy with our Honor and Remember flag. And that was the primary impetus, I believe, from the prime sponsor to bring the bill. The one thing that I need to point out is that when she brought the bill to us, it mentioned that it would be flown, or an amendment thereof, said it would be flown on the State House, over the State House. The problem is, and this is just a quirk, Gold Star flags are only made anywhere in the United States in a size of 3x5. If we put a 3x5 flag on our flagpoles over the State House, it's going to look like a postage stamp. So in talking with Virginia from our visitor center, I asked what happens when you need to fly a 3x5 flag, and she said we do have a 3x5 flagpole over the State House. The trouble is you wouldn't see it from the ground, and that's what they typically use when they're marketing flags in the visitor center that say they're flown over the State House. They fly them on that flagpole up and down.
Representative, if you could suspend for 1 minute. Ma'am, I'm sorry, we can't have signs in our rooms. Yes, thank you. Please continue.
No problem. So I just wanted you to be aware that if it comes up in testimony about we want this flag flown over the State House, there is a size limitation, and there is constantly we have a limited number of flagpoles on State House grounds. We have a limited number that you can fly And you always have to be cognizant of the fact that it could be a day when we are flying a flag at half-mast. And that limits even more the number of flags or the size of the flags that can be flown. So it's a little bit of a more complicated issue than maybe what you think or would think. But I'm sure you'll hear some interesting testimony, and I'm sure Mr. Grady will speak, and that gives you an idea of what our veterans groups are thinking and Gold Star families. So with that, I'll end my testimony. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions from the committee? So this is just to make sure I'm clear. This will allow it to fly on another flagpole that isn't necessarily on the roof, anywhere on the State House grounds.
State House grounds.
Yeah,
correct.
okay. Thank you.
And it allows, we tried to craft it so it would allow the governor to order the flags on State House grounds.
All right, thank you very much.
And the Veterans Cemetery. Yep.
Senator Lang with a question.
Again, this is a may, not a shall, correct?
Correct. Further questions? All right, seeing none.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of folks who signed in but not wishing to speak. I just want to make sure that's everybody's intention. So we're going to go down to Kevin Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies, gentlemen of the committee, for the record, my name is Kevin Grady. I am a 25-year Air Force veteran and a 28-year resident of the town of Hooksett, New Hampshire. And today I'm here representing the State Veterans Advisory Committee. I've testified before all of you folks many times, so I think you know what we do. I wanted to just kind of fill in a little history lesson that Representative Hill kind of alluded to. I've been doing this since the 2016-2017 session, coming and talking to the Senate committees and the House committees on behalf of the SVAC. And my first experience with this was House Bill 1249 in the 2018 season, then Senate Bill 501 2020 to 2021, House Bill 1434, 2023 to 2024. And they all asked for the same thing, which was to fly this commercially available flag called the Honor and Remember flag over the State House. And the problem with this bill always was the fact that the preface in the bill would say, this is the symbol or a symbol or anything like that of one of our fallen servicemen or women. And for us, the only symbol of a fallen serviceman or woman is the United States flag on a coffin. That's it. There were some other folks that took exception to the actual Honor and Remember flag because from a distance, it looks like the North Vietnamese flag. It looks a lot like the North Vietnamese flag, actually. And we have a lot of Vietnam veterans that really rubbed them kind of the wrong way. Now, I don't want to take away from what Honor and Remember does because they do nice work for the individual families. They customize a flag at no cost to a family member, to the family of a fallen service member. And I support their work. The compromise solution finally started to ease in the right direction for us anyway, last year with House Bill 142, which was amended on the House floor after going to the House floor as ITL to say, let's make this about Gold Star families and not about this flag. And so that's what kind of happened with that. It came back this year with, we're still going to fly this Honor and Remember flag. At the compromise solution, Sean Buck, who is our cemetery director out at the Veterans Cemetery in Boscawen, has been flying this Honor and Remember flag out there since 2021. Okay, so that flag is there every day. I asked him if he had a Gold Star flag. He said he does not, but he doesn't want one because there's a Gold Star memorial at the cemetery, and he's afraid that would sort of detract from that if he had the flag out. Sean flies this Honor and Remember flag every single day. Most of it, like the service flags, he takes those down in the wintertime because he doesn't go out and actually physically plow the area where these things are. But he leaves that thing up all the time, and we feel like that's kind of the compromise solution. With this, what we're trying to do is finally shut out Honor and Remember and make Gold Star Families Day, the last Sunday in September, about the families and not about a commercial concern that has a flag that some of our members object to. So when the bill originally came out, it did have Honor and Remember in it. We opposed it. Representative Wade actually came to our State Veterans Advisory Committee in February and said, I'm going to amend this bill to be about the Gold Star families and not about this honor and remember flag. And that has happened with the amendment that you see before you. Last night at our meeting, we took another vote. We had actually voted to follow it after Representative Wade came and talked to us, because basically you said you're going to amend it. When we see the amendment, we may change our mind, and we did last night, and we unanimously do support this legislation. I hope that this will put the whole thing to rest. I got to tell you, from my perspective, doing this for a lot of years, it always pains me to be the only person in the room that comes in and says, here's a bill about veterans, and we veterans don't support it. You know, that I don't like to be put in that position. So I'm hoping that this will finally close the door on that. And subject to your questions, that's really all I want to tell you this morning.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Do we have any questions from the committee? All right.
Thank you all.
So again, we have a lot of people that signed up. Anybody else that wants to speak on House Bill 1332? All right, seeing none? That's not the sheet for this next one, okay. All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing.
You're not going to give me a booster seat. I'm not sitting in a chair. Need low chairs, no clock. What the hell has become of this place?
I don't know. All right. Do we have anybody here to introduce 1132? All right, seeing none, we're going to open the hearing on 1132, and I'll ask Senator Lang to introduce.
Mr. Chair, I'll introduce House Bill 1132, prohibiting the display of certain flags and banners in public schools and public charter schools, and establishing penalties for the display of prohibited flags and banners.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Selig? Sorry. Selig, all right.
Thank you, Senator Pearl and committee, and I
Morning,
look forward to
welcome.
spending the morning with you, as I'll be introducing another bill later. So I am here in opposition to House Bill 1132, which prohibits the display of certain flags and banners in our public schools, charter schools, and establishes penalties for those violations. Under the proposal, the schools might display only a very narrow list of approved flags or banners, essentially the US flag, the New Hampshire flag, and a few limited exceptions. Any other flags would be banned, subject to complaint, removal, and escalating penalties, including disciplinary action and fines up to $1,000 per offense. It might be framed as good school policy, but please make no mistake, it's a government mandate regulating symbolic speech. Flags are forms of expression. They convey values, identity, history, and community. For many students and families, flags represent heritage, pride, remembrance, and belonging. When the legislature dictates which symbols are permitted and which are forbidden, it is authorizing state censorship based on content, which runs directly counter to the fundamental free speech principles and the spirit of the First Amendment. The First Amendment does not say free speech is protected only when the government approves of a message. It says government shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, and this bill places school officials in the position of policing expression under threat of penalties, determining which viewpoints may be displayed in public school spaces. That is not neutrality, it's government control over expression. Putting aside the First Amendment, the bill also has excessive overreach. Will kindergartners no longer be able to have birthday banners? Will fifth graders in the Gridiron Challenge no longer be able to fly Patriots flags? Will the high school dance team be banned from their St. Patrick's Day banner during their Kaylee? Will senior photo banners be banned from graduation ceremonies? Then too, the enforcement structure turns educators and administrators into speech monitors. It creates a climate where students and staff might hesitate to express identity or values for fear of violating state policy. The chilling effect is especially troubling in schools where students should be learning how to engage with differing perspectives, not how to avoid them. New Hampshire's motto, "Live Free or Die," reflects our deep commitment to liberty. Suppressing symbolic expression, even in schools, undermines that tradition and erodes trust in our institutions. The answer to controversial symbols is not prohibition, it's dialogue and education. Let's let students learn to debate, to understand history, and engage respectfully with differing views. And so for this reason, I urge you to vote no on 1132.
Thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Senator Lang.
Do you think it should be an unrestricted access? They can put anything they want up?
I don't believe they should be able to put anything. There are certain things that we have labeled as hate speech, for example. So I don't think it would be appropriate to put hate speech flags up. I think if a class is learning specifically about the Civil War, for example, and so in the classroom, there's the Confederate flag is hung and the Union flag is hung because they're being there for the purposes of educating people on what these two flags are during that lesson, that's appropriate. Do I like the Confederate flag personally? No, but that's my personal belief. I don't believe that we should be saying schools can't display that for educational reasons. Do I want swastikas hung in schools? No, but again, if they're doing a unit on World War II, it's important that they recognize what a swastika is and how it was used and perhaps understand its origin. So I think there's a difference between common sense about this and prohibiting all flags.
Paula? Sure.
So, but again, absent curriculum-related issues, flags, do you think there should be a limit on what's allowed to be displayed in the classroom?
I think schools and individual school districts have the right to say that they are willing to have certain flags and not others, but those should be local, specifically local decisions based on the local community's wishes.
One more follow.
But isn't that local community, whether it's the school board or anything else, the state deciding what's going to be displayed? So what's the difference between the legislature doing it and the local governance board doing it, which is also a political subdivision? Why is it okay for them and not the legislature?
So the school board is nonpartisan. The state legislature is not.
Sure.
Thank you. Senator Altshuler. Can you reach it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Representative Selig, for taking my question. I think you started to talk about this, about whether local communities and their locally elected school boards and administrators hired by said school boards should be the ones to make decisions about what's appropriate for their communities. And if the community, is your suggestion, if the community objects to something, then the community should have the control over whether or not something should go up or not go up?
Yes, I believe it should be done at the local community level, that each school district should be able to make the determination, just like they should be able to choose the appropriate curriculum for their school district, right? It may be that for my school district, phonics-based reading makes the most sense. But it might be that in your school district, whole language reading makes the most sense. And the cost of those programs might be different and it might make more sense. Or maybe your district is a district that has multiple curriculum available. Those are decisions that should be made at the community level, not at the state level. We shouldn't be dictating what those policies should be and adding penalties, huge penalties for this kind of thing, which, you know, what's going to happen if a kid comes to school wearing a flag that's not listed on this? Is that going to put them subject to a penalty if they don't send the kid home or tell the kids to change their clothes? How is that going to work? If someone has a flag on their, you know, in the parking lot, we see people driving around with flags all the time these days attached to their vehicles. If one of those pulls into the parking lot, is the school district then going to be subject to a $1,000 penalty? How's it going to work?
Thank you.
Okay, that question. Yeah, I'm going to ask one first. I think there's some clarity starting on line 3 as to the situations that you were just discussing about. That wouldn't, I don't think someone coming in personally with a flag on their car would be a public school or a public charter school displaying that flag. I think that is relatively clear. I mean, would you agree?
I would not agree. What if it's the school principal with the truck with the flag, or the superintendent, or what if it's the head of the PTO? You know, where does the line end between, if it's on school grounds, it's on school grounds. If we're at a sporting event and you have a group of parents who unfurl a banner that, you know, one member of the community objects to and says doesn't meet these things, are we then going to have a situation of subjecting the school to $1,000 fine. And if it's, what if 10 parents are holding flags that someone says doesn't meet these standards? Does the school then pay $10,000?
Senator Lang with a question?
Again, I was going around the same discussion. I think this is about the government, the public school, right? That is a government agency. It's a political subdivision of the state established by the legislature. It's a government agency. And what this says is public schools and public charter schools, both created by the legislature, shall not display. So I think it was pretty clear that an individual wearing a shirt with a flag on it isn't the public school where it doing that. It says it's the individual doing that. But again, so I wanted to ask a question. You talked about a little bit about free speech and the ability for free speech. Do you think teachers have unlimited free speech in the classroom?
Again, I think that's an issue of local control and the way that teachers, the way that school districts make decisions about how teachers, what teachers should say or shouldn't say. I think that we need to be very careful about what we're regulating, because I think, do I think that teachers should get up in a classroom and say only people who like blue are good people and only people who like red are bad people? No, but teachers don't typically do that. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a teacher who's ever done something like that, but that's not typical teacher behavior. And there's always appropriate channels for addressing that situation if a parent complains about a teacher. So that's a different issue. That's not relevant to this bill.
One more follow-up.
Thank you. But again, you just said that flags are a form of speech and indication and protest, right? And now you're saying
They
that.
could, I did not say they were a form of protest. They certainly have been used at protests.
Okay, so again, my question is, we know that Supreme Court's ruled that the First Amendment privilege is not absolute for a teacher. So it has been ruled in courts and otherwise that they don't have an absolute right, especially when speaking in their official capacity. And again, if flags are a form of speech, it could be regulated. So do you disagree with that assessment of the Supreme Court? That there's a certain amount of rights that are restricted from people acting in their official duty as a teacher?
I believe that teachers' responsibility is to educate children to be curious, to ask deep questions and do deep thinking about issues. I think that that's the primary focus of teaching.
Thank you.
Senator Gannon keeps raising his hand.
Senator Gannon?
Sorry, he's in the corner there.
So I think you alluded to this earlier, that content-based restrictions always fail, right?
Sorry?
It's a basic rule of thumb in law is content-based restrictions always fail?
I did not say that.
No, okay, I thought you were, but that is, just so you know, that is a rule
Right.
that the courts have held, the Supreme Court has held content-based. So how can I let the localities restrict content? You were saying let them decide locally, then they're making a content-based restriction.
I don't understand your question.
I'll hold and I'll just listen. Never mind. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
I'm going to struggle with this name. Can you help me here?
Deborah, I
Do you think it's Deborah?
that's what I think.
AFT. Deb
All right.
House.
Oh, Deb Howes. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Good morning. Oh, wait. Good morning, Walt.
It's okay. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I was just waiting for,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt your conversation. Good morning. My name is Deborah Howes. I'm president of the American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire. And I am here to speak against this proposed legislation. We feel that this legislation has the potential to interfere with school staff's ability to create a warm and welcoming school community within all of our public schools. Schools are more than instructional spaces, they are communities. Flags are visual symbols that show students they belong and that they are safe and respected. Taking this discretion away of what you can hang in your schools, whether it is directly tied to a particular lesson being taught that day or part of the atmosphere of the school, sends a message that some students and families do not count. I'm going to tell you a little story about the school that I taught at for 18 years. Every year in the spring, we would have a celebration of learning. And that was something to engage our school families, to invite them into a dinner And we would have projects that students worked on at the different grade levels, and we would present those projects in the gym so students could bring their families in to see things they have worked hard on. Many of our upper elementary schools would work on projects about immigration, which is like a 4th and 5th grade social studies project, where people had come from, back to the Pilgrims, back to immigration from Europe over the 18th century. Some of our families in Nashua were more recent immigrants. We also have many language arts projects where students read folk tales from different lands, or they read about family traditions. And we would always have a dinner. There was a potluck dinner, and families would bring in foods. And many of those foods were from their different traditions, because traditions are important, not just in things we read about, but to families. And we would decorate our school with flags from all the different places that our families were from. And it became part of our school that those flags would remain up, showing that all of our families, wherever they were from, whether they came recently or long ago, belong as part of our school community. And all of our students belong as part of our school community. So that's not necessarily a particular lesson we were teaching that day, but it showed that they all belonged. So that was why, that's a particular reason in one particular school, but we are not unique in New Hampshire. We all have families that came from somewhere, whether it's recently or long ago, and our heritage is important to us. And creating that sense of belonging for every single student is important. It unnecessarily limits the educational use of flags and banners and symbols when they're only part of a narrowly defined lesson. The bill is yet another state intrusion on local decision-making about schools. Our local school board actually was okay with this use and encouraged things that encouraged family engagement. Didn't want to use the same verb twice. Sorry, I'm off the cuff here. So they wanted active family engagement. So this sort of activity was well supported by our local school board. And it also invites arbitrary enforcement because it's based on complaints. So if someone doesn't like a flag, you might get a complaint. Whereas somewhere else, you won't. And we know when there's arbitrary enforcement, that invites lawsuits. So do you really want to pass another law that is putting state control over local decision-making of school boards that's going to get arbitrarily enforced? We really have been down this road before, and we really shouldn't go there again. Let's trust our local school boards to make the right decisions on policies for their schools, and let our schools create communities where all students can feel they belong, and get back to focusing on what's important, which is helping our students learn and thrive, because that's what is important in our schools. And I don't know how many others you have signed up. Okay, because I'd really like to limit questions so I can get over to the other education committee.
You have time for questions?
Okay.
Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. House, for taking my question.
Yep.
We usually see each other in 2 other committees, so welcome to EDNA.
Yes.
It's an unusual situation to have you here. So I'm looking at the bill in line 13, and you brought this up in your testimony, that any violation of this section shall result in a formal complaint.
Yes.
So that this is complaint driven. And from the reading of this bill, it sounds like anybody can make a complaint, not someone who works in the school, not a family that belongs to the school, just anybody. They can see a social media post of somebody who has posted something about their child's classroom, or a school has made a post advertising a festival that they have coming up at their school, and somebody who is unrelated to this school community altogether can then go forward and make a complaint and begin what we have seen already in New Hampshire as outside forces coming in to harass local school communities over their very intense local decisions. Is this opening another avenue for that kind of harassment to continue?
It certainly is. I mean, you don't have to have a student saying, I feel uncomfortable when I see that symbol. You don't have to have a parent saying, my student came home and said they felt uncomfortable. It could be someone who saw it, like you said, in a flyer advertising an event at the school, or in the background of somebody's social media post, or heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend. Sorry, that's a song cue, but I'm not going to sing. You don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
No messing,
But-
Little aria.
no messing around in my committee.
Yeah, it's a little early in the morning. But it could lead to that, which is, again, why, complaint-driven processes
Yeah.
lead to uneven enforcement and frankly, lead to challenges in the courts.
Paula?
Yeah, final follow-up. Unfortunately, none of the sponsors of this bill came to support their own legislation or explain to the committee why they felt that this was necessary. But is it your experience, since you represent teachers, that when there is an issue within a school community, that kind of complaint issue problem is addressed first with teachers and then it loops into administration before it goes up to a school board? I mean, there are processes with which many issues that families have are there is a way to address objections to anything, whether it be
The normal thing
school
would,
decorations or curriculum.
sorry.
Yeah, no
Yes,
worries.
the normal procedure would be to have a conversation or an email or a text, whatever way you are communicating with the teacher. And if that is unsatisfactory, it's up the chain of command. It's to the, the principal and then, going further to up administration if you are not getting a response that resolves things. There are ways to resolve these locally if you have a concern. This, goes straight to saying everyone must do one set thing across the whole state. And it disregards what is good educational practice, which is creating safe and welcoming communities for our students and their families. Because family engagement is part of keeping students successful in school.
Thank you. And I'll remind the committee members, we have many bills that
Yep.
the reps and senators aren't able to attend. So let's kind of not disparage them for that. This current makeup we have of not being able to be in one location has made it hard on all of us. So I'll just remind everyone of that. Further questions, Senator Lang?
I just have one question. Do you agree that the First Amendment privileges of a teacher can be restricted within the school?
Well, I am not going to answer a yes or no to that because it is a qualified limitation. Our curricular speech is indeed limited to the approved curriculum, but we do have the right to incidental speech. So we can respond to questions that students are asking. We can guide discussion or allow discussion in the classroom, so that's between students. And we have the right to speech outside of the curriculum, like as we're passing in the hallway or like at bus line incident. So it is not an absolute limitation. And I can send you the AFT 8027 versus ADLE ruling again if you need that. So there's a full discussion
I
of
think
it.
we're in agreement. It's not an absolute. It's not.
It's not absolute, but it's also not a simple yes or no.
Further questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll let you get to your next
Yep.
hearing.
And curriculum's locally adopted, as you remember.
Daniel Smith. Ben, could you pop open the windows a little bit? It's getting very warm in here. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Chairperson, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Daniel Smith. I'm a coach and educator out of Somersworth, New Hampshire, and today I'll be testifying against this bill. To do so, I will be sharing with you a poem authored by a gentleman named Mike, an educator out of Manchester, New Hampshire. And while these words are not my own, I humbly stand beside them. Why I hang a pride flag in my classroom. Ugh, why do you have that hanging up there? I look at these two boys sneering at something on my classroom wall, so I look up to find the offensive decor. My eyes scan through all my posters, all gothic and nerdy glory, before they fall on the pride flag, menacing in all its rainbow splendor. And I carve up the angry retort in my throat into a school-appropriate question. Oh, that? What's the matter with it? The two students just roll their eyes and grumble something like, I'm tired of seeing that everywhere. They quickly switch to poking fun at each other, trading accusations of gayness, laughing as they admit that their mothers would put them in the ground if they found that flag in their rooms. I wonder how many other parents have buried their children in early graves, ashamed of how they strayed from the straight and narrow, their coffins painted a stark and inoffensive white. Months later, another boy starts skipping my class shortly after we start a new book. I catch him about a week later and ask him what's going on. He says that he doesn't want to read any more of that gay stuff, referring to one of the characters sneaking off on a date with her secret girlfriend. I don't have a problem with people like that. I'm just tired of seeing it everywhere. I think of the difference between discomfort and erasure. How even the mention of gender makes some clap their hands over eyes and ears so they might deny the humanity before them. I became a teacher so I might build bridges with these kids, help them discover their voice and their stories living in their fingertips. To watch as they begin to blossom into new gardens I just might see someday. But there are those that want to hold us to curriculum dressed like Leviticus, their hate a coliseum of lions' mouths, their God hungry for these heathens, queer children nailed to crosses like Christ's, bleeding out the sin of being different. I look at the empty seats in my classroom, and I can't help wondering how many of them are occupied by ghosts. These kids told that they must cross-stitch their hearts like Frankenstein's monster, must confine themselves in coffins of flesh that taste like rotting earth. That flag is more than mere fabric. It is a table for us to break bread and shatter stigmas, a garden to nurture understanding out of discomfort, a welcome banner to this small sanctuary where everyone is equal, everyone is empowered, where they can finally feel at home. Thank you. I yield my time.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Amanda Azad? Okay.
Bill's going with me, see you got different.
It's down to you and me, I guess. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Amanda Azad. I'm the policy director at the ACLU of New Hampshire. We are here asking you to consider how extreme HB 1132 is. It is both vague and incredibly broad. It bans all flags and banners in schools with very limited exceptions. So US flags, state, city, town flags of New Hampshire, POW and military flags. And then the school's own flags, such as their own sports team, but no other sports teams. So if the Patriots win next time, no celebrating. Going even further, it allows for flags as part of a lesson, but only for a few classes: foreign language, world geography, math, language arts, and United States history classes, with penalties ranging from professional disciplinary action to a $1,000 fine. So first, a few questions, because the language of the bill is unclear, and I think that should be the issue that you all try to navigate and discuss. It's removing any messaging in the form of paper on a wall. Is that what a banner is? what exactly is a banner? Or messaging that exists on a fabric hanging from something, what is a flag? There are no definitions. Or is this banning a rainbow pride sticker on a door or a poster on a wall? Is that a flag situation or not? All rainbows related to the LGBTQ community? These uncertainties are a big problem since there are also significant penalties attached to any misunderstandings. Also, why is there an exception for math classrooms but not science classrooms? Why US history, but every other history class cannot have flags or banners? Under the language of the bill, you may not have a happy birthday banner. Quite literally, you cannot have Irish flags for St. Paddy's Day. Any seasonal holiday flags, no professional sports teams, and I think notably something we can all agree on, there's no university or college flags, so no UNH or Dartmouth, no graduation flags for a class of 2026, and the list goes on. For example, a display of different college flags, as I mentioned, for seniors, either encouraging them to attend or showing which schools people have already gotten accepted into. This is a very common sight in high school hallways this time of the year. So that is illegal under this bill. So what about autism awareness flags in special education classrooms? What about bullying prevention month banners in school counselors' offices? What about a pink breast cancer flag on a teacher's desk in a pencil cup? Banning all flags and banners just removes two entire platforms of communication and celebration and representation. It's like saying no posters allowed in school. Are we trying to get to a sterile, all-white room with just US and military flags? That feels deeply problematic. The US Constitution guarantees robust free speech and expression rights, and flag bans tread all over those. And yes, these protections do extend to teachers and students, and those rights of freedom of speech and expression do not stop inside a school. We cannot sanitize schools so that children are just going to empty-walled classrooms with only government and military flags. Frankly, that sounds dystopian and kind of authoritarian. With only a handful of classes receiving exceptions for academic lessons, I do want to flag this bill would negatively impact the education of all students with censorship, along with limiting student artwork and club activities. Could the school display student artwork with any flags? Flags related to the identity of the student, nationality, ancestry, or pride flags. Student clubs may not be permitted to display flags at club meetings or in school displays. Any banners? I have a lot of questions about banners. I don't know how schools or teachers would interpret the language of this bill. You could probably ask 5 different people here what this is or isn't allowed and get 5 different responses. Truly, what is a banner? The attempts to control students and censor classrooms needs to stop. A sweeping flag and banner ban like this is just too extreme. It's excessive and repressive for New Hampshire. So asking, please, ITL. Thanks for your time.
Excuse me. Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Odd, for taking my question. You mentioned in your testimony awareness weeks and months that are brought into high schools, and I'm going to give you a scenario. I used to work at a crisis center, and as part of a statewide initiative, the crisis centers would collaborate with the local high schools to raise awareness about teen dating violence, and would have a table in the cafeteria or in a main hallway where a lot of people passed with a banner that was teen dating awareness week, right? And so that kind of banner, that are you suggesting that like autism awareness, suicide prevention, breast cancer awareness, those kind of awareness building and community building opportunities would go away?
Yes, they would. And there are a lot of, as you said, there are many, and a lot of times they are focused on youth. So there are mental health awareness, there are suicide prevention. Right now at my child's daycare, it's child abuse prevention, and there's all sorts of signs and different displays about that to bring awareness. So I realize that the folks on this committee may not agree with me on a lot of things related to this bill or things that are implemented in here, but the bill itself is incredibly vague. It's incredibly broad. It is really exceptionally extreme in what that it would cover. And I don't think anyone really wants to see what schools would look like after this would be passed.
Further question?
No, all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you for your testimony. Beth Scar? I'm not- Sorry, Beth, I don't remember how to pronounce your last name.
I'm Beth Scare from Nashua, and I messaged Lisa Freeman, and she did not know her bill was being heard today, and that's why she's not here. And I can't take the ACLU seriously anymore. They didn't make a peep about my flag case in Nashua.
Mr. Chair, we're not disparaging other people who have testified.
Okay,
Thank you.
So keep your testimony to.
Let's keep the testimony to the bill. Thank you.
thank you. I'm here in support of HB 1132, which would effectively ban pride and trans flags from New Hampshire schools. In 2020, Nashua High School North Principal Nathan Burns approved the hanging of a 6-foot-long Pride Progress flag in a prominent place in the lobby of Nashua High School North, where it hangs to this day. It includes pink and white triangles, blue and white triangles representing transgenderism. It teaches the lie to all those kids that girls can be boys and boys can be girls, which leads to taking health-damaging hormones and having healthy body parts removed. In 2023, under that same Pride Progress flag in Nashua High North, there was a display of many small flags representing many sexual and gender identities. There were flags for gay, bisexual, pansexual, omnisexual, polyamorous, non-binary, transgender, lesbian, aromantic, sapphic, demisexual, Achillean, xenogender, gender fluid agender, asexual, demi-romantic, and aroace. Nashua High North AP Psychology teacher Paul Menard orchestrated the display of these flags. In an email to the principal, he said, "We would sell for $1 a card that says, 'I'm proud to be blank,' and people would write what they identify as. And we'll hang it on the wall outside the cafeteria near the pride flag." Mr. Menard was prompting kids to identify as polyamorous, meaning having multiple sexual partners. Xenogender, which includes identifying as an animal or an inanimate object, and gender fluid, which means changing gender identities from one day to the next. It's perverse, inane stuff, and it proves that we are well down a slippery slope. In Dr. H.O. Smith's school, a school for first graders in Hudson, there's an 8-foot-long pride flag. It's so big that it hangs down 2 stories in a stairwell that children use to get to class, but where parents would be unlikely to see it. Why is there such a big pride flag in a school for first graders that should know nothing about sexual orientation? I have seen many other pride and trans flags in schools. I don't believe they should be there, especially since the same people who hang these flags would never hang a Christian flag or any flag representing traditional religious values. It's all one-sided. Why is that? Is it because they are trying to separate kids from their parents' traditional values? That is not what schools should be about. Please vote ought to pass on HB 1132 to ban pride and trans flags from schools and help restore them to be a safe place for families to send their children. And I passed, you should have gotten pictures of the flags. I have the display at Nashua High North with the big flag at the top and all the little flags underneath representing the bizarre stuff. And then there's the humongous pride flag at Dr. H.O. Smith School in Hudson. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? All right, seeing
Thank
none,
you.
thank you. Julie Smith? Ben, is there another sheet? Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this bill. And while I was listening to other speakers, I was taking some notes. And you just heard from a fellow Nashua resident. I lived in that city for many years, and it's an embattled city and embattled by litigation over free speech. And even though the city charter says that the school is quote unquote styled separately, we know it's really not. City Hall has censored, used viewpoint discrimination on flags. So when I hear people who have spoken before me talk about being censored, the ACLU speaker had said a few things about that. You know, nowhere in the bill does it say gay. And if you remember Governor DeSantis from a few years ago, when people said, don't say gay, it's not about gay. It's kind of like you can't play nice in the sandbox, there'll be no flags at all. Even though another speaker has said that, oh, it's sterile and white in the school. The kids are there to learn how to read and write and do math and use logic. They're not there for indoctrination. I say that as a taxpayer. And Ted Cruz had said, Section 30 with social media, either you're a platform or a publisher. So which is it with the flag? Is the flag a platform or a publisher? That's the question I ask anyone that has a problem with this bill. I think we need to get back to basics. I support the bill, and I think that's pretty much all I have to say. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Thank you. All right, seeing none. Amy, sorry, I'm not even gonna try the last name. Sorry. Teravacia? That was close? All right. Good morning, welcome. Turn your mic on, please. Thank you.
Yep, for the record, my name is Amy Terravecchia. I am with 603 Equality. I am here to testify in opposition to HB 1132. The bill's sponsor, when this was back in the House, had said numerous times that the purpose of this piece of legislation was to create an environment of neutrality in the classrooms. And I would argue that this bill does the exact opposite. It ensures that only one perspective, one viewpoint, can be allowed to exist within an educational setting. One of the most beautiful things about our country is the ability to engage with diverse ideas, opinions, and people in thoughtful and critical ways. The classroom setting is where we test these skills before entering the real world. By censoring what flags and banners can be displayed within a classroom setting, you are strong-arming educators, students, and school administrators to prescribe to a specific and strict worldview. You have heard time and time again that America is a melting pot. The great promise of our country was that the United States could be home to anyone who believed in our freedoms, our rights, and was willing to partake in the great experiment of democracy. Freedom of expression, freedom of critical thought, and freedom of speech are all central to the tenets of the founding of our country. I can think of numerous instances where flags have been displayed in classrooms outside of a lesson plan, but have still benefited students. Flags can signal pride in your heritage, your lived experiences, or your clubs or community affiliations. Flags can signal celebration for birthdays, achievements, graduations, and more. And flags can raise awareness about medical research, fundraisers, and community needs. It is no surprise that at a time when New Hampshire's legislation is also entertaining extreme censorship bills in the classroom, the flags are also coming under attack. The purpose of our public education system is not to create a compliant citizenry. It is to cultivate and educate individuals who can contribute thoughtfully and thoroughly to society. For this reason, I urge you to recommend ITL on HB 1132.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Scott Files. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us today and hearing our testimonies. My name is Scott Files. I'm from Somersworth, New Hampshire. And I'm here remembering the one teacher in my high school that displayed a pride flag. I graduated from high school in 2012. And I never needed to approach this teacher for assistance or comfort or support, but I know that that teacher was a widely known resource for any student in my school who needed anything. The pride flag that they displayed was simply a message that their door was open for a student who needed assistance, that they were a safe space, and wasn't a politically motivated expression. Just I'm a supporter of this community, and anyone who needs anything can come to me for help. So preventing a teacher from being able to have a nonverbal representation of their openness to be there for their students, I think would be very harmful for all students. And I think that's all I've got.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. That's all I have on the sheet. Anybody else who wants to testify on House Bill 1132? Brian, did you want? Okay, sorry, I didn't see you on here.
I may have forgotten to check the speaking box, Mr. Chairman. I think I was on the second sheet. But thank you for allowing me to testify. I'll be brief because I know you have a lot of bills to get to today. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire. I'll make just a few short points. First, I think it was important when the legislature required that there was the official display of the American flag, the New Hampshire state flag, but this approach of prohibiting with these limited exceptions, I think, is the wrong approach. First, let me say it was brought up earlier, the exception in letter A around which classes these can be displayed in. I mean, I'm sure many of us have budding artists in our families and in schools, and if they were to, and we want to see those that art displayed, when it comes time for that, and we'd be concerned that when you start selecting classes like this, you might interfere with a student's ability to express themselves as well. The last point I'll make is, and I think Ms. Howes raised this, is in Roman 2 through the end of the bill, really, it gets into what I assume is disciplinary action required of, I assume, personnel, and that really gets into the granular level of disciplinary procedures and agreements that are arrived at the local level. And so we're concerned that this brings both the state board into that and prescribes what is done when there is a violation found. So with that, I'll close my testimony and happy to try and take any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So the issue of what kind of flag, what's a flag? Is it made of fabric? Is it made of vinyl? Is it made of paper? Does this mean flags in pen cups? So a teacher, this in one of the schools in my hometown, we have a teacher who went through couple of teachers, but one most recently had a very, very difficult battle with breast cancer, very difficult. And the school community really, really rallied around her treatment and recovery. And would this bill mean that the teachers who put breast cancer awareness flags in their pen cups in their classrooms, on their desks, as a reminder that we are all supporting this one particular teacher, does that go away?
I think under this bill, it certainly could. I mean, it doesn't get into detail about what displaying a flag or a banner means, and so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And I think for you, the legislature, as a policy matter, I can anticipate every year a bill coming in, were this to become law, asking for a certain a flag that represents something to be added to the exemption list of this. And I think that's the slippery slope and the whack-a-mole that you end up with in passing a bill like this.
May I follow up?
Oh, sure.
So in one of the high schools in my district, one of the students had a tragic accident while in a school program, and ended up in the hospital for, I think, 8 months, and is now with traumatic brain injuries and internal organ injuries. And we actually heard legislation about him in another committee this year. But the community, again, rallied around this student and put banners up all over the school, raising money for the family to help with the family's expenses, and providing meal trains, and just raising awareness that this student was still a part of this school community. And let's remember and keep folding him into the school community. Those banners, do they go away under this?
I think so. I think that's why we should not, one of the reasons we should not pass this legislation.
Last question.
Paula? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So, a teacher or an administrator or the front desk clerk at a school, whose child or themselves are a member of the LGBTQ community, under this, can they not have a little flag in their pen cup either?
You know, that's actually an example I was thinking of as I was in the audience, the concern that, someone would not be able to have a personal display such as that, because we do know, as you said, we do know teachers have been going through cancer and other illnesses, and I would hate to prohibit that, their ability to do that.
Thank you.
So Brian, I've kind of been listening to all the testimony.
Yeah.
I know Senator Gannon was talking about content-based discrimination earlier. We had earlier testimony about hate speech, is prohibited. I guess I need a little bit of clarification if you're able to, on how do we approach that now? Who determines what's hate speech and what's appropriate and inappropriate in the current setting?
Yeah, I think it's a variety of ways. I guess I don't have a short answer for that, though I'd be happy to follow up with some of them. I mean, there are some issues that are prescribed in laws discriminatory, for example, so that's one area. And then there are some calls that are, just left at the local level as to whether something is, it may not be a hate speech situation. It may be just, a student who's, inciting a dangerous dangerous occurrence at school. So I may not be getting to yours. Specifically what you're asking about, I guess I would say it's a variety of ways in which we determine that sort of thing.
Okay. I mean, we've had good discussion today about, especially LGBTQ pride flags, Christian flags were mentioned, and I just was curious how the schools were handling this currently.
Yeah, the schools certainly will follow the law, but I think one of the issues I know when you do have very broad language out there that is left up to subjective interpretation, that's really, I think, problematic when you can, when it really gets down to an individual's viewpoint. That's, I think, where we run into trouble in making sure that we're passing laws that are evenly enforced, and not just left up to the interpreter.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, I'm going to close the hearing. Oh, did we have I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Come on up.
Hi, thank you for allowing me. I'll be quick. My name is Louise Spencer. I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and also the Kent Street Coalition, which is an all-volunteer grassroots advocacy organization, and we oppose this bill. In listening to testimony today, I learned that some interpret this bill as specifically trying to ban pride flags, and to the extent that this bill is left open to enforcement through complaint, it really raises concerns that it will not, this ban, however it is, will not be universally enforced, and that will constitute discrimination by the school. And it just opens the door to numerous lawsuits of all kinds. I will also speak as a taxpayer. The idea that we would be spending valuable school dollars on these sorts of lawsuits is very disturbing to me. It's also, in fact, disturbing that the legislature continues to spend so much time on bills like this when we have very real issues confronting Granite Staters. This time could be so much better spent addressing issues, the real issues that our schools are facing. So for these reasons, I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none, Louise, I'm just going to ask that you sign on for our official record.
Sure.
And with that, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 1132. All right. There you go. Brett McFarland is here, right? All right, we're going to open the hearing on House Bill 1115 and recognize Representative McFarland to introduce. Good morning and welcome to ED&A.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. See ya. All right. So let me fish out a copy of the bill. All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill before you, it is a narrow clarifying measure. It is grounded in settled constitutional doctrine. The purpose of the bill is to establish a uniform statutory definition of citizen of New Hampshire as a citizen of the United States who is domiciled in this state. And that is reflective of black letter law under Article 4 and the 14th Amendment. And that's all the bill does. It doesn't create new rights. It doesn't remove existing rights. It doesn't change eligibility for voting. Why are we doing this? We see that across our RSAs, the word citizen and the phrases that you see in the bill, citizen New Hampshire, citizen this state, state citizen, New Hampshire citizen, occur repeatedly and are undefined. And when the term is left undefined, we see that agencies are forced to infer the meaning. We see that courts are left to assess the legislative intent, and that consistency can break down. I saw in some of the legislation that was presented last year that there was clear confusion on the meaning of the term. So this bill seeks to restore the legislative clarity by defining this term that we use frequently. Undefined terms, as I say, invite inconsistent interpretation. And by having this in our statutes, we are ensuring that when the legislature uses these terms, that it does so with constitutional precision and with consistency, and that it prevents ad hoc expansion or dilution of the term. I'm happy to talk to the committee about the constitutional foundation, but I think it is fairly self-evident under the US Constitution, the 14th Amendment. But if you want to explore that with questions, we certainly can. What I will touch on is some of the concerns that were raised by the minority opinion on the House side. I was frankly disappointed that it was not more of a bipartisan bill when it passed the House, but it received a minority opinion that suggested that the 14th Amendment may require New Hampshire to allow persons who are not domiciled in New Hampshire to vote in this state. That is not a proposition that is supported by facts or by law. And when we look at Whit v. Berman, it is abundantly clear that the domicile test has been and remains the right test. So this bill is not intended in any way to be a partisan bill. It doesn't alter voter eligibility. It doesn't change election law, and it doesn't delegate any new authorities to election officials. So that's one concern. I think that one of the other concerns I've heard stated is, well, why are we creating a state citizenship? And to be clear, it doesn't. It doesn't create any separate or independent state citizenship. It is exactly what our United States Constitution sets forth. The only other thing I will touch on is the amendment in the bill to RSA 110-B:81. That amendment is there to ensure that this clarification, and I looked through all of the RSA references that referenced citizen and that referenced any of these terms of phrase, and considered would there be any unwelcome impacts. And this was the one place where I said, okay, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And I spoke with the Adjutant General's office to ensure that this clarification did not unintentionally affect eligibility for the New Hampshire Medal of Honor, and that we preserve recognition for those who are lawfully serving and domiciled in this state at the time of qualifying service. And in consultation with his office, the language that you see here is language that meets with their satisfaction. So I appreciate your time. Happy to introduce this bill to you and recommend ought to pass, and I yield for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
None? Thank you. Anybody else who wants to testify on House Bill 1115? All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Representative Selig is here, so we will go ahead and open up the hearing on House Bill 1705. Good morning and welcome again.
Thank you. Your committee seems to have shrunk since I walked in the door.
It is. Unfortunately, many of our committee members are over at Granite Place introducing Senate bills, so it
Yes, in front of my committee, as
it makes it a challenge.
turns out. So I'm finding myself being a bit schizophrenic, as is one of my co-sponsors, Representative Dry, who is here as well, and also serves on the Education Committee with me. In any event, thank you so much for having me today to introduce House Bill 1705. So first, a little bit of background. In my one of my other hats that I wear is I work with the New Hampshire Theater Project's Elephant in the Room series, which uses the power of theater to talk about really difficult issues. So we have a number of programs. One that we have right now is about the challenges of navigating elder care. We have one about youth mental health. We have one about human trafficking, and another about the opioid epidemic. But for several years, we've done a program called Aftermath, which specifically deals with PTS and first responders. And because of an incredibly generous grant we received last summer, we were able to take that program on tour across the state. So we've been in Plymouth, we've been in Keene, we've been in Concord, we've been on the seacoast in a few different places. We will be in Nashua May 27th. But the way the program works is there's a scripted play reading followed by a facilitated conversation about the issue. And what came up over and over again in the conversations that we were having with first responders is the impact of repeated trauma. So it's not that there's one singular incident that necessarily puts someone in a level of having PTSD, but that going over and over and over again to these incidences really puts tremendous stress on their mental health. The other thing that became really clear in the conversations is, especially the further north or the more remote you got, the less access there was to any kind of health care, especially for our volunteer first responders. So we're talking about EMTs, firefighters, sometimes even dispatchers, who literally are not paid, but the firefighters and EMTs are literally putting their lives in danger to rescue the rest of us. And what they get back from it is, That's it, right? They don't get anything. They don't get paid. They're volunteers. So these are people who are putting their lives at risk, experiencing this repeated trauma, and in many cases, recognizing at a certain point that they need mental health care. And they have no ability to access it, and they may or may not have the funds to access it. So I was having a conversation with another first responder about a completely different issue. And he opened up to me that he had realized he was in trouble, and he'd called his community. He's in a large community where they have full health insurance, but he called the EAP line in their community, the Employee Assistance Program, and said to the person at the other end, I need some help. And they were able to confidentially get him into see counseling, help him get the support that he needed. And I thought, wait, we have these people who are volunteering, who are experiencing the same kind of traumas as he is, but he works in a community that's large enough to provide him this care, and they're not. What if we could find a way with an existing program at minimal cost to help as many of these volunteers as possible? And that's where the idea came from for this bill, was to say, okay, what's the least expensive, most effective way to get at least a little bit of support to these people who are literally putting their lives on the line for us on a regular basis and getting nothing back. I had a conversation while we were in debate in the House about this issue with one member who said to me that he was supporting the bill. He was not planning to support this bill, but he'd had a conversation with someone who pointed out to him that if all of our volunteer EMTs and firefighters quit and all those towns had to hire firefighters and EMTs instead and pay the costs for those people and then also pay for all their insurance, it would cost, probably 100 times what this bill initially requested. So this is my second year of the bill. I brought it first. There were a lot of questions, so they tabled it. I brought it back this year. The fiscal note's been taken out of the bill and it's been put off for another year so it can go through the budget process next year. The effective date is 2027 as amended by the Senate committee. But I want to point out that on 2 different occasions, the committee recommendation was interim study. And on 2 different occasions, by a bipartisan margin, we flipped the vote because there's bipartisan support for this bill, right? If it were to pass with the fiscal note that was originally there, it's about $114,000 to benefit almost 6,000 individuals. That doesn't mean that all 6,000 of them are going to be calling the employee assistance line, but it would give them access to it. And so it's limited, it's for volunteers or for people who work in communities where there's 5 or fewer full-time paid first responders. And the way I came up with that number is those are generally the communities that are less likely to be able to afford to provide full insurance. And I think about places like Tamworth, where they have 1 half-time police officer as their town staff, and the rest is all farmed out through mutual aid and volunteerism. And so, to be able to give that half-time employee who still is experiencing those same traumas access to some level of support. That's where the motivation came from. I'm also going to hand out to you Representative Damon, who's from Sullivan County, who's one of the many co-sponsors of this bill, isn't able to be here because of other testimony. So she's given me her testimony. But fundamentally, she talks about why it's worthwhile, that it's a resource for these people who take their risks for their neighbors, whether it's to address PTSD, substance abuse disorder, which often is caused by that PTSD, anxiety, depression, etc. It's a really cost-effective approach to meeting the first responders' needs. And most people are aware that small rural communities, including her entire district in Sullivan, District 8, it's really mostly volunteer first responders. So it's a small statement of our support for those first responders. And it would be much more expensive if we don't do something to help support them.
Thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Any questions? I think the idea is certainly worthy. I'm not sure what the path will be if we pass it as a policy. I don't know how well it will survive our Senate Finance Committee, but we will have to see.
So actually, all of the fiscal note has been taken out for this year,
Understood.
and it's been set up so that it would go into effect 2027, so that it can go through the full budget process in the next biennium. And the representatives from DHHS have a draft amendment that also addresses that. And so I'll leave it to them to present that to you and give their explanations, but there is a method for that.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, and thank you so much.
Any other questions? No. Looks like we're good. Thank you. Representative Dry?
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. For the record, I'm Representative Margaret Dry from Plainfield. I represent Sullivan District 7, Plainfield, Cornish, Newport Unity, and Charlestown. I am one of those volunteer first responders. My husband and I have been doing this for 45 years. We get up 24/7 and put on our clothes and coats and brush off our cars and go help our neighbors in emergencies. 2 years ago, one of our own needed some help. An EMT, a taxpayer, a New Hampshire resident, a volunteer firefighter, was going through some mental health issues. He called me because he knew I was a representative and I might be able to help him. He couldn't get access to the employee assistance program because he wasn't a state or town employee. He had done all the right things. He called all the right numbers, all the things we got in training, but he needed a little bit more. He really needed what the employee assistance program gave, but he had no access. He had to ask other firefighters that had access, maybe where he should look for help. He found help, and he is doing much better. The problem is he had to look for it all by himself, and he had to pay for it by himself. And that's when I saw this bill that addressed this particular situation, which was a real need for us. I signed on as a co-sponsor. When it got to interim study for the second time in the House from the House Finance Committee, I took this request to our rescue squad. We have about 25 members, all volunteers, and asked if we should just let it ride and play out, or if we should try to overturn this interim study. And they unanimously said, please try to overturn interim study because we don't want to kick the can down the road anymore. And the reason I think that this amendment helps is that it sets up a fund that accepts donations and gifts and grants. And there are so many people that think this is a great idea, but maybe costs too much or maybe isn't the right time, who have been talking about a 501c3, just to buy access for the few people. Not everybody's going to need it, but the few people that might need access. They would have a place to put money like that if they did donations. There's a lot of goodwill out there. I think it needs to be channeled, and I think this is the way to channel it. And I'm asking for your support for this bill. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? No? Looks like we're good. Thank
Thank
you. Representative Newell. Good morning and welcome.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for your time and attention today. I'm here today to express my enthusiastic support for HB 1705 as passed, thankfully, by the body on the other side of the wall. This legislation is the result of a clear and compassionate appreciation for the wonderful work of our small town and volunteer emergency responders and the logical impact of the situations they face on behalf of the people they serve. These are the folks who rush into danger, into life-threatening situations to help strangers at great risk to themselves, and the things they encounter can be deeply traumatic. I shared a story when this was heard in the Labor Committee, just a small snippet to illustrate the trauma of experiences like this. And what I shared was the experience of my two children and I 2 years ago when a fire broke out in our house in the middle of the night. By the time I realized, half asleep, that something was wrong, thick black smoke filled every crevice of the first floor my youngest was sleeping on, and much of the second. Both my boys were fast asleep and I wasn't far behind. It is nothing short of a miracle that we survived alive and unscathed.
Well, we're glad you're here today.
Thank you. But also, as I was thinking this time about coming in to testify, the Sentinel reported on a house fire not far away in Troy. One person passed away in the fire, and another passed days later in the hospital due to her injuries. A father and daughter, precious, valued members of our community. My heart breaks for them, for their families, their loved ones, and for the brave first responders who rushed in at 2 a.m. to try to save them. A host of emergency responders, as part of mutual aid agreements from different towns, came to aid the Troy Fire Department in their rescue efforts. Some of these heroes will have access to mental health supports through the Employee Assistance Program, and some of them won't. This bill seeks to remedy that discrepancy. The cost is low and the impact is immeasurable, and I, for one, think that it's worth every penny.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? All right, seeing none. Representative Stringham? Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. I support HB 1705. I'm a member of Finance Division 3. I think part of the strength of this bill and the reason why I'm behind it is the way that these employee assistance program services are provided. I've been an employer myself for 28 years and I've always offered employee assistance programs to my staff, and at times they've been lightly used and at times heavily used. But they've been helpful to get people started. But here the structure is the employee assistance program is staffed by employees of the state. I think there's a question about how much these services would be used by potentially 6,000 people that are eligible. Because it's structured this way, that if the utilization goes up, that's something that can be addressed on the normal budget process. I don't think it's going to be something that we need to make a heavy appropriation for to even get going. So financially, it's a very, very low risk, low cost program, and I know these services are going to work. So that was essentially what the discussion was that we had in finance, is that there's some questions about how much this would be used, but also the structure that it's done, as opposed to, let's say, pay a per member per year fee to an outside association. We could be looking at a major appropriation that would be lightly used. Right now we have 7, my understanding is we have 7 full-time staff, 1 more position open that we can't fill because of staffing freezes. But there are people there that are qualified, trained, that can handle these costs without getting an additional program. So from a finance perspective, it lines up very well with the policy implications. And I wanted to share that with you as you go through this.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? All right, seeing none. All right, John and Michael, come on up and give us your perspective from DHHS. Good morning to you both and welcome.
Senator Pearl, members of the Senate E-DNA Committee. For the record, I am John Williams, and with me today is?
I'm Michael Lawless, the Director of the Employee Assistance Program.
And the department is not taking a position on the underlying bill, but you've heard the good testimony that there certainly is merit. It does expand beyond the scope of who we currently provide. Mr. Lawless and his team provides employee assistance to the state agencies. This would be a different and new to extending it to first responders and very qualified by the numbers, the 5 or less in those municipalities. So we're here primarily just to ask for the committee's consideration that it is very mindful of us, knowing that we're trying to protect our current budget and our current core missions and initiatives that are in there. And even in planning for the next biennium, we have to be very conscientious of the programs that are fully supported. And therefore, we are requesting a friendly amendment to add some contingency language that would read to the following effect: the Department of Health Services shall not be required to implement the provisions of this act until such date that the program is sufficiently funded to meet the requirements of Section 1 of the bill. It treads very lightly on the bill. We certainly understand and appreciate the sponsors and co-sponsors and their testimony. It is true that there were some concerns in the House. That's why the bill was recommended both by the Policy Committee and the Finance Committee for interim study. And you can tell by the hard work of the folks that you heard testifying before us that somehow miraculously got the bill moving along to the Senate. So with that, Senator Pearl, we're here to take questions, but I did want to provide you with the requested language. And we would say that this would address our concerns, and we certainly would have the same conversation with the chair of the Finance Committee as well.
Thank you for your testimony. Hey, Michael, anything else you want to add?
No, not at this time.
All right, questions? All right, thank you both. Anybody else that would like to testify on 1705? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing. Understood? All right, we're going to open up the hearing on House Bill 1426. Representative Kesselring is recognized. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Representative Kesselring. I represent Hillsborough 18. That's Manchester's Ward 12. So to open this hearing, HB 1426 is simply one idea. It's about making sure that we are going the route of making sure that if we're regulating something, that we have the people in place to understand exactly what the rules are when it comes to federal and everything. When it comes to licensing and different things, we require our contractors to be licensed and go through this process. The bill ensures that every program within the Department of Environmental Services has qualified, certified professionals involved in the decisions that can impact the environment, but also slow down things when it comes to the economy in our communities. Over the process of this bill, I've observed a lot of different companies, which we have one here, who have had issues with this process because of the information that's given from the department is not in line with federal regulations or other regulations that they have to follow as a contractor. You'll hear from them. It's not an unfunded mandate. We've worked with the department to make sure the language is there to fix it, and they also will be presenting a slight amendment to the wording to make sure that it's good, and I've approved that amendment already. We didn't do that in the House because it came after the House hearing. But other than that, I think the questions will be answered a little bit more, but if you have any questions for me, I'd love to take them.
All right, just make sure I'm clear. You're comfortable with the language that DES has.
I am comfortable with the language. I worked with Adam Crapo on it before he left the department, so.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Michael Mazzalia, how did I do?
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Mazzalia. I'm the owner of Alpha Asbestos Abatement. I've been in the asbestos business for going on 49 years now. I've been there since the industry started. So I've seen the regulations change over the years. I've seen a lot of things that have happened, and we have a few situations where the department has changed its regime of people that are there. One of the problems there are that without the people being certified and understanding all of the rules, it's very difficult to have a non-certified person telling a certified person how to do something. For example, we had a school in Manchester, New Hampshire. And in that school, the designer who's certified to do this work as a designer, according to the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, that's a federal regulation, a HERA, we call it. In that HERA document, it requires a designer to design how the project would be done. The designer wrote out the plan, how the job was going to be done, and that's how we bid the project to do it. And it required everything to be done in what we call a modified full containment, where we put splash guards all the way around the bottom of the floor, the ground area. And when the floor is wet and flooded underwater, we remove the tiles underwater, vacuum up the floor, and then remove the mastic. They refused to accept the design plan for the way the design was written, even though that it's a designer designing it. They kicked it back and they made that designer rewrite that plan 3 times. And one of the things I said to the department, I says, by you doing that, you have shifted liability from the designer and onto the state. Now the state's going to assume that liability because that's not how the designer who's gone to school has designed it. It didn't matter. That job ended up costing the school an extra $15,000 to do because we had to plasticize the whole room. We have other situations right now where there is an inspector that has done some inspections. And in the inspection, when he went to do the inspection, he miscategorized the material. He categorized it as a category 2 non-friable asbestos when it really should have been a category number 1 non-friable asbestos. It makes a huge difference because a category 1 non-friable can be removed as what we call non-regulated asbestos containing material. Well, when you change that characterization and you make it become a friable material, now that changes and now it cannot be done as non-rackham. So this job has now become a problem, is causing a problem for the owner to proceed and go forward on his project. And he's trying to bring some, low-income housing in to bring more housing into the marketplace for people to buy. It's slowing down his process from being done. So these are just two of the examples. There's many, many more where the guy that's coming out doing the inspection, not being certified, is going out and he puts his own twist on what New Hampshire says. And in many conversations, I said, look, as contractors, we cannot just follow one set of guidelines. We have to follow all. OSHA is more strict. OSHA states more definite how we have to do something, and so doesn't the EPA. And it says, and one of the things that the state of New Hampshire needs to be very careful of is not to put means and methods into anything that's done by the abatement contractor, because you shift liability from the contractor and put it onto the state. I said, the contractors go in, we get certified to do our work. One of the things that we've talked to in great detail is also the fact that these individuals that we were told as contractors that they're certified because the state has the authority to certify them. And I said, I disagree with you, because if you look at the model accreditation plan according to EPA, the individual has to go get a certification training according to the EPA first. They take that certification and bring it to the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire takes that certification and says, you're certified to do that part of the work or the job that you do. And that's the element that's missing. So these individuals that are in these positions do not have that certification. They have never been and done that type of training. One of them, I think, has done what we call a project monitoring. And one of the things that we get into back and forth is he keeps citing that a project monitor has to do this and a hygienist has to do that. Those are definitions and terminology that the state of Massachusetts uses. They're not the state of New Hampshire. We actually do not have a category for project monitor in the state of New Hampshire. In our industry, we call them pump jockeys. These are the guys that are, after you've done the job, they'll come out, they'll set up their air sample pumps. A lot of the times they'll bring a microscope with them. They'll read the air sample right at the job site, say, yeah, you're clean. I've done their visual inspection. You can tear down and you can go. That's the norm. And then that sample goes back to the laboratory. They reanalyze it to make sure they're in compliance with the NVLAP. And then that's done. It's all said and done. And that completes that cycle. In this one particular project I was just talking about, where the guy miscategorized the material is a class 1, category 1 non-friable asbestos. He's saying the material was damaged. This material was not damaged. We have pictures of the roof intact. But what the owner did that was wrong was when he went to the site, he was under the assumption that he could put tires back on it. It's a modular unit, put the hitch back on it, and then tow it directly to ERCOT to get rid of it. So he had removed, there was a porch and a small addition on the front of it. He had done that without having an asbestos inspection done. So now I believe some of those paint chips or things that were on that structure fell and they were underneath it. Now he identified that material, this inspector identified that material as part of the roofing material, which it's not part of the roof. The roof was not touched. The only thing that came back positive were 2 items on that. One was this asbestos roof sealer. It's like a paint on sealer. And the other was, he called it asbestos tape, bituminous tape that was, we found out after, he's talking about the material that's on the windows around the metal frame that seals the metal frame to the wood. So this is really not a tape. It's actually a gasket or a caulking material that goes in there. That material it's still present on the unit. That's all that's left to be done. But now they want to have the whole site done, and they want to have this tape and this paint that's on the ground. They want to have all that paint removed as asbestos when it's never been tested. So there's no test results showing it's positive. So I said, well, we can assume it's asbestos-containing material, but it's not tested. So until you test it, that's the only thing you can do. But it did not come from the roof. But again, decisions are being made based on the facts of this inspection report from an inspector that did stuff that's not coherent to today's standard. For example, OSHA uses certain words like shall and shall not. And then one of them is you shall not composite samples. In other words, each material is a different material. So if I have drywall, like my wallboard, that would be one. My joint compound would be a second. In his inspection report, he's saying that he composite samples. Now, that material is already gone because it was on that addition and that debris is already off-site. So at this point, it's a moot point. But the inspection wasn't completed according to the federal regulation for the way that it's written. The DES doesn't even see that. And again, having them certified, this would help them to understand, okay, this is what we have to pay attention to.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Senator Reardon, do you have any questions? All right, we will we'll listen to DES and see how things go. Thank you. Michael and Ted? You didn't want to come talk to us today?
Ted's available for questions.
I'm worried about clarifications. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Mike Fitzgerald, I'm the Assistant Director for the Air Division, which contains our asbestos program that was previously referenced by the previous speaker. And with me is Ted Deers, Assistant Director of the Water Division. And one of the key points is that this legislation does not just affect the one program that was previously mentioned, but it affects numerous programs, dozens, potentially dozens of programs across the department that would be required to, where we certify different individuals as inspectors or, surveyors or whatever. And we would have to hire someone to be a certified inspector in each of one of those program areas. So it goes across the entire base of the department. We do not oppose the bill. We appreciate the sponsor's willingness to work with us. We did arrive at some language that we felt comfortable with at the in the House. As mentioned in our letter, there is one sentence that we wanted to add, and the sponsor indicated in his testimony this morning that he would agree to that, and that's in our testimony letter. I won't repeat the entire testimony letter. The key issue here is that although the department, as I say, we do not oppose the bill, there are some concerns, and one of those is that this could pose conflicts where we have certified individuals who are perhaps preparing tests for certification, et cetera, and then they would have to be certified themselves, and they would have to take the tests that they prepared, which would pose a certain type of conflict. We've also had some input previously from the Attorney General's office that certifying ourselves potentially poses a conflict, but again, the language is language that we think we can live with. It has been softened to allow us to do this through recruitment, retention efforts, and so on. The other part is financing. There will be some cost associated with this, although the bill states that it allows us to use existing program funding and grant funds, et cetera. Some of those grants may not allow for these type of expenses. When you put in a grant request, you have to give a budget and have a certain, make sure that all those are approved expenses. So it's possible that even though the grant or the statute may not allow for it. But assuming that it will work in certain programs, the department would have to pay the costs associated with that certification. And also generally, individuals who are certified command a higher salary. And we in our program, for instance, the asbestos program, we do have highly trained individuals who came from the industry and conduct these inspections for us. I would note that in the situation that was referenced previously, the dispute here is over a report from a certified inspector, as this bill envisions that we would have. So I believe what they're doing is contesting the report of a certified inspector. So with that, I think be happy to take any questions. Again, I'm here for the asbestos air programs, and Ted is for the water programs that may be affected, so we'd be happy to address any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. I'll throw this question out and either one of you can answer it. So currently, when you run into a situation such as what Mr. Mazzalia testified to, that there was a conflict between federal requirement and state requirement, how do you resolve that?
Our rules generally, we go by our rules as well as the federal rules, and our individuals are trained to interpret those regulations. And, you know, in this case, although I'm not at liberty to discuss that particular situation, it's an ongoing compliance investigation for us, but we generally, our rules either incorporate the federal regulations or we apply the more stringent of the two.
So when you find there's a conflict between the two, and in this case, Mr. Mazzalia is required to follow federal regulation, but it may be in conflict with state, how will you resolve that?
We don't generally find those situations. Our rules are written so that they're compatible with the federal regulations. We would disagree that there's with the assertion that there's a conflict.
Okay, I assume there's a process within DES that they can raise the concern that they may disagree, and I'm sorry, the word escapes me, I'm looking for it right now. So that is available to him in the event that.
Yes, we have inspectors go out, take a look at sites, we make a determination. We are always willing to take a look at information that's provided to us and so on. In this case, we have provided, as of last week, we provided a 40-page letter with all of our interpretations and the investigation reports and so on. And we've actually set up a meeting with the site owner, the developer, tomorrow morning at 9:30 to review and make a final determination as to what the requirements would be.
Administrative appeal, that was the word I was looking for.
These do not rise to this to an administrative appeal. Director's decisions such as permits and so on, those can be appealed. These are just regulatory determinations. They're not subject to appeal.
Okay.
But again, we are always willing to listen and you know, but we're the agency that's charged to make the final decision.
Understood. All right. Thank you, sir. Any further questions? All right. Seeing none. Any further testimony on 1426? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Yeah. Well. Yes. I didn't want you to rush back if you. All right, next we're going to open up the hearing on the non-germane amendment. Amendment number 20261299S. And I will introduce, since I am the prime sponsor, this is an amendment that's going to be added in addition to the language that's in House Bill 1109, and this amendment deals with transferring certain positions in the Department of Corrections to Group 2 retirement system status. And I'm going to defer to Grant Bossy to give us some further explanation on the bill. So, Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the committee here today. My name is Grant Bossy. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff for the New Hampshire Senate, and this amendment came in at a request from the Department of Corrections. There is some disagreement between the agencies on how various positions within the walls are classified. This would clarify that. These positions are paid as Group 2. This would clarify that they are indeed Group 2 and would help DAS as they harmonize the computer systems over there. Two small notes. One, due to a drafting error on my part, this was made as a replace all amendment, so I have apologized to Representative Flanagan for accidentally nuking his bill. This was meant to be in addition to the underlying bill, which you have already heard. And secondly, we have gotten a request that, from DAS that there was one additional position that was not included in the amendment. I would suggest holding off for a week on this. We can get this redrafted properly with the additional position, and as an addition to the bill, not a replace all on the bill, and you can consider it next week. I defer on the need to the Department of Corrections, which I believe is here today to explain their request.
Thank you very much, Grant.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? All right. And Jessica? Good morning and welcome.
I appreciate the opportunity to testify on this amendment on behalf of DOC. I would first like to make a clarification. Our goal for this amendment is to reaffirm Group 2 status for the employees serving in these positions. We are not asking to add additional Group 2 contributors. Rather, DOC aims to ensure these employees receive the retirement benefit they have been contributing to throughout their entire careers. In recent months, our colleagues at DOP have undertaken an audit of positions to ensure they are appropriately labeled in the correct retirement group. In their review of DOP found that many of our positions were mislabeled as Group 1, even though employees occupying these positions have been actively paying into the Group 2 retirement fund. In the RSA outlining the Department of Corrections Group 2 requirements, correctional line personnel employed at DOC are entitled to Group 2 status if the following conditions are met. The first is the employee works within a correctional facility in close and immediate contact with prisoners on a daily basis and have responsibility for security. The second is the employee successfully completes a course of training approved by the Police Standards and Training Council, otherwise known as the Academy. And third, the employee meets all physical, mental, educational, and qualifications for continuing certification as correctional personnel. All of the positions identified in the audit and outlined in the proposed amendment meet this definition. Among these positions are nurses and clinical mental health counselors, librarians, chaplains, teachers, and programming coordinators, all of whom work behind the walls and have direct daily contact with inmates. Additionally, all of the correctional line staff occupying positions on this list have attended the Academy at Police Standards and Training. The Department of Corrections is here today to properly classify these positions in the personnel system by reaffirming the positions as having Group 2 status. The incorrect retirement group designation occurred over time, but were only recently discovered. Since DOC became aware of the audit results, we have been working to correct the data on behalf of the employees in these positions to ensure that there are no barriers to them collecting the retirement they have spent their lives preparing for. If not corrected, the mismatch between the position's retirement status and the employee's contributions will have real implications on these employees' lives, as they have spent their careers working in hazardous and dangerous conditions and have, by the statutory definition, earned Group 2 status. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee?
Great.
So just to be completely clear, there'll be no fiscal impact with the passing.
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to testify on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Yes. And we will open the hearing on the non-germane amendment to House Bill 1511, which is Amendment 2026-1302S. And I will introduce, since I am the sponsor. This amendment is relative to the membership of the Ag in the Classroom Committee. And, oh, wait a minute, wrong one, sorry. Two amendments here. Let me start again. We're going to open the hearing on the amendment 2026. No, it is 1302. I'm sorry, I had it right. 1302, and I will introduce. This amendment is going on the bill that's relative to the Ag in the Classroom, and this new amendment would be dealing with New Hampshire Day at Big E and requiring the governor to annually issue a proclamation observing the third Friday after Labor Day as New Hampshire Day at the Big E. And with that, I will recognize Representative Dry to further explain. Sorry about the confusion. I have two amendments on this bill and I had the wrong one under. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning again. Thank you, and thank you for having me. For the record, I'm Representative Margaret Dry from Plainfield. I represent Sullivan District 7, Charlestown, Unity, Newport, Plainfield, and Cornish. If you don't know about the Big E, it is the fourth largest fair on the continent. It is the regional fair for all the 4-H and FFA winners at the state level. It goes on for 17 days in September every year. About 1.5 million people come through, which is more than the population of the state of New Hampshire. And the only building that the state of New Hampshire owns is outside of the borders of the state is the New Hampshire building on the Avenue of the States at the Big E. I am the chairman of the trustees of New Hampshire trustees of the Big E. Governor Ayotte is an ex officio trustee. And so the impetus for this bill was to recognize the contribution that that the Big E has made to New Hampshire agriculture. It is an agricultural fair, and to put it on the list because we felt that it was worthy of recognition in the state. The Big E itself has a large economic impact on Western Massachusetts, but also on all 6 states that participate. The amendment came to a bill I think that it really actually is almost germane to because of the relationship between the student groups that come down and agriculture. I sent around something that the Big E sent to me about just some of the New Hampshire participation in the Big E from agriculture in last year. From everywhere from 3 steers in the New Hampshire beef steer competition to FFA doing about a dozen different kinds of career development events and leadership development events. 4-H, after being almost decimated in the COVID years, has zoomed back from going from 4% 4 years ago to 11% of the people that show beef, dairy, goat, and sheep programs, not to mention the ones that do the public speaking and demonstrations. There's just loads going on, lots of family farms going down, lots of agriculture things from New Hampshire being celebrated at the Big E. That's why I think this really actually finds a nice place in this bill. The reason it didn't pass, there are a couple of reasons it didn't pass in the House. And if you look back at the hearing, the exec session on it, some people are reluctant just to put things on a list. There was a fear that it would just disappear. We'd never hear about the Big E again. It would just be a list in the statute that was never done. Well, there are 30 different days to proclaim in the statute. The longest one was from 1955, which is Lafayette Day. And if you remember last year on Lafayette Day, we lit off a cannon on the front lawn of the State House. So it's definitely alive and active. All the other bills, except for about 5, are in the last 25 years. And one of them just took place, it just went into effect the 1st of January 2026. So this is a living and active list. If you want something celebrated, this is the place to put it. It will not go there to die. It will go there to be proclaimed. And finally, it was, well, I think they thought that it was just not going to do the job that they thought it would do. And I really feel like that in light of what's going on in New Hampshire, the way that it supports agriculture, the fact that it's on an agricultural bill, it really makes the emphasis that we are promoting agriculture here and around the New England region. And I would be happy to entertain any
Thank you,
questions.
Representative. Just for clarification, 2 reasons that I decided to do this as a non-germane. One, while the topic is similar, it is a different chapter of statute. And 2, this way it takes away the argument that it never had a hearing in the Senate. And so now we've had a hearing and it becomes germane that I can attach it to any bill I choose. And so that is one of the rules of the Senate. So
Thank you.
for
I
your
appreciate
presentation.
that very much.
Sure. Any questions? All right, seeing none?
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Jasper? and I almost read your other amendment that you asked me to put in. It's this one, and thankfully I got it straight.
Good. I'm glad you haven't forgotten the other.
Uh,
For the record, I am Sean Jasper, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food. I am in support of this amendment. And excuse me, good morning, Mr. Chairman and member of the committee, Senator, how are you? So New Hampshire Day is something that occurs every year at the Big E. And as was mentioned, the New Hampshire building is the only building owned by the state of New Hampshire outside of the borders of New Hampshire. And it is unusual in how it is controlled because although it started out as being under a committee in 1930, eventually I think that became too confusing. And so what happened is for many, many years now, decades, that building is under the sole authority of the Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food. And I can assure you, because we put so much time into what we do at the Big E, that this will never be forgotten in statute. It'll be something that we will always be mentioning to the governor, and it makes it much easier to have it in statute, quite frankly. It's an important event. We have vendors there who compete to showcase their New Hampshire products. Some of our vendors at that building, that is the single biggest period of time where they sell their products. They spend the whole year making products to sell there. They are all New Hampshire made products, not all agricultural, but we lean to that. It's just a huge event and very important to the state. So I hope you would support this. I am concerned on the underlying bill because the House did kill it, but hopefully they'll recognize the wisdom of this amendment and having it in statute. But I have presented you the amendment. The Agriculture and the Classroom Committee is meeting today at 1 o'clock, but I sent it to them weeks ago. There has been no opposition to the amendment, so I'm quite confident that we'll have no problem there. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Well, thank you. I have had the good fortune of visiting the New Hampshire building. I actually spent some time working there in the New Hampshire Maple Producers booth, and it's a wonderful event and certainly worthy of a proclamation by the governor. And I'm hopeful that this amendment will make it through and we'll get something that I think is very worthwhile. So, any questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to testify on, excuse me, on the amendment? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing. With that, we are done for today. We're not going to exec any bills with such a small staff. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week.